In lesson 1.2, we're going to talk about like terms. But before we can discuss what like terms are, we need to understand the big picture, what equations are, what expressions are. Then we get the smaller parts of the equation, and then we get to what like terms are. So let's start with the differences between mathematical expressions, algebraic expressions, and algebraic equations. This, what we can see on a screen, only has numbers. Yes, they are multiplying each other, additions and divisions, but they're only numbers. When we only have numbers, this is a mathematic expression. If we happen to replace some of the numbers for variables, for letters, for variables, this is no longer mathematic, it is now algebraic expressions. Variables turn this into algebra. And then if we include an equal sign and something on the other side of the equal sign, this is no longer an expression, this is going to be an equation. And this is what we're going to be working with, not only in Algebra 1, also in Geometry, Algebra 2, Pre-Calculus, Trigonometry, Calculus, and any other part of math. We deal a lot with equations in math. So as soon as we have an equal sign and elements on both sides of the equal sign, we turn this into an equation. We're going to learn about inequalities in lesson 1.4, but for the moment, let's focus on equations with the equal sign. Now that we know what equations are, let's get into the inside of an equation. Here on the screen, we can see a rather complex equation. We're not going to solve this type of equations yet. We're going to get this at the end of Algebra 1. But let's identify all the elements we have. First, we can see that there are many different individual elements into this equation. We are going to call them terms. Each one of these elements with their signs included, especially for the negatives. We always include the sign, especially for the negatives. These are called terms. We can see some of these terms do not have variables, do not have letters, like the 8 and the 12. These terms are called constant terms because their value is not going to change. Regardless of what value we put for x, that is always going to be an 8, and the other one is always going to be a 12. Then we can see there are some numbers multiplying the variables with their signs included one more time. These numbers are called coefficients. Especially when we get to quadratic equations and polynomials, understanding coefficients will be very important. So you can save this lesson for the future. And finally, each of these variables is going to have an exponent, and this exponent are called the powers of the variables. And now that we understood everything inside of an equation, we can go to the idea of like terms. Like terms are terms. We understand that terms are each individual element on, this is an expression because it doesn't have an equal sign. Each of these terms that have the same variable with the same power, it's important that the two conditions are met. Same variable, same power are considered like terms. Let's identify some like terms in this expression. We have, for example, 5x and 7x. They are like terms because they both have an x, and both of the x's are to the power of 1. We cannot consider 5x and the 2x squared like terms because, yes, even though they both have an x, one of them has a power of 1, the other one has a power of 2. For example, 2x squared is a like term with the negative 6x squared because they both have a power of x, they both have a variable of x, and they both have a power of x. And then the constant terms, the terms without variable, these are also like terms. And this is how we identify like terms. We make sure they have the same variable and the same power. And now we're going to get deeper into combining like terms in Unit 2 when we get to operations with x. But let's introduce the topic right now so we get an idea and we understand a little bit better how like terms behave. For example, we already know, let's use this rectangle for calculation. We already know that the 2x squared and the negative 6x squared are like terms because they both have the variable x and they are both to the power of 2. We can combine them by simply adding or subtracting their numbers. They have a positive 2 and a negative 6. This is -4, and we keep the x squared. So for like terms, we keep the variable and the exponent, and we only add the coefficients. For example, 5x and 7x, they are also like terms. They both have x, and they are both to the power of 1. And we can combine their coefficients. 5 plus 7 is 12. And finally, the constant terms, we have the -8 and the positive 17, and this turns into positive 9. And this is how we combine like terms. As said before, we're going to get deeper into these operations in Unit 2, in operations with x, but this gives us an idea of first what like terms are, and second, how can we combine these like terms. For more math lessons like this one, visit our website, mathusermanual.com, or follow us on Instagram at mathusermanual.